Hello everyone, welcome to the AZ204 certification tutorial brought to you by CloudTag.
So now let's talk about AZ204 paper. So as I said, AZ204 is a developing paper that we have in Azure, right? So what is AZ204? AZ204 is how you can do development in Azure. So does Azure provide only these services? No, definitely no. Azure has a wide variety of services that they have, right? So before we talk about Azure 204 particularly, let's talk about how Azure is actually managing these things, right? So basically, what is an Azure? Okay, Azure is a cloud provider, right? So what is actually cloud provider? What is actually cloud computing? Right? Anyone knows about it? You can answer them over the chat. Right? So cloud computing is an ideology where they try to ease in the work of administrators. Right? So before cloud computing came into picture, how was the scenarios? If an organization wanted to deploy an application, we all are using multiple applications right now, right? Social media applications. Even in our organizations, we used to deal or work with different kinds of applications. Okay, who all created them, right? So it's the developers, it's a team who have actually created them, and how every user across the world are accessing those applications, right? It's because they are actually deployed that particular applications onto a server. So organizations usually, once they develop their application, they deploy those applications inside a server. So there used to be a separate engineer, okay, who's gonna manage these servers, sit and manage these servers, arrange the servers, organize the servers, maintain them, and keep them in ready state, right? Because server is a place where you host your application, right? If the server is not good, then application would fail. If the server is not compatible, then application would not work fine, and then it's gonna affect the business continuity, right? So actually, usually they develop and deploy their application onto the servers, and that's how they do it. Correct? So now you see that this is the manual work that they were doing it. Okay, so development is totally a manual work. Yes, I agree. They write the codes, they write the business logic, and they develop. But when it comes to setting up a server, right, it's a hardware devices that they set up, right? So they used to purchase, they used to spend money, purchase the hardware devices, servers, the disks, whatever it could be, right? All the things associated with the deployment part, they used to buy, they used to set up, and they used to deploy the application. And imagine the cost of these servers are also not reasonable. Okay, it depends upon the quality, depends upon the computing power that they choose, right? And they try to set up everything, and once the application is over, right, if you feel that okay, the application can come down, right, and application is not working fine, then the server cost is actually being wasted. Sometimes organization keep a huge set of servers not being utilized at all, right, which is actually affecting the capital expenditure of the organization, right? But when we come to cloud computing, right, cloud computing says that okay, you are having the burden of buying the servers, purchasing the servers, handling them, maintaining them, everything. You don't do that, we'll do it, just pay for our service. That's what cloud computing does, right? So cloud providers say this, okay, they have a huge set of servers being maintained, they maintain them, and they cater their services to the users whoever they need it. Take an analogy of a renting system, right? So if you are a person, right, if you are new to a city, right, would you actually buy a new house and then stay in that particular house? Definitely no, right? Firstly, you would actually go on a rent, right? You would go on a rented basis, you would take up PGs or whatever it is, right? So you can, you take up a house, okay, for rent, and you pay on a monthly basis, right? Initially you pay some deposit, and monthly you pay the rent, okay, and you stay in that particular house. What does it mean? As long as you stay in that particular house, you're just paying your charges, you're paying your expenses, and you're staying in that particular house. Once you vacate the house, you don't have to pay, right? So that's the same concept that we have in cloud computing, right? So cloud providers have these servers being laid out, have these different sets of applications, different sets of services being laid out, and they are providing those services. And whoever or whichever organization needs to utilize them, they need to actually connect to the cloud provider, take it from them, utilize them, and pay only for what they use. That's actually a biggest what's a benefit of going with cloud computing, right? So when we just relate it with the traditional methodologies, right? If you don't want the servers, if you don't want to deploy the application, yes, we uninstall the application and the server is still available with us, okay, which we bought a very in a very recent time, and we are not utilizing it for a for effectively. But when it comes to cloud providers, we just purchase them, we pay for how much hours we are using it, and then we are just leaving it, okay, when we don't use it, right? So not only Azure is one of the cloud provider, we have AWS, we have other clouds also who is actually a cloud provider. Perfectly fine, right? So now that we have chosen Azure to be our cloud provider, how is Azure actually handling these services and stuffs, right? Because it's not one or two customers, right? There are millions and billions of consumers of Azure cloud services, right? So usually, what Azure have done, or Microsoft has done, is that they have laid out their infrastructure across the globe. Okay, they have laid out their infrastructure across their globe, and they have deployed their services, be it India, be it US, be it whatever country it could be. Across the globe, they have laid out different services, right? If they want to set up a compute resource, yes, compute resources there, storage resources there, as part of this particular region, and as part of this region as well, and part of other regions as well, right? So they have these services being deployed across the globe, and whichever user, let's say from India, someone is actually going to deploy an application. They have some, let's say contoso.com as an application, okay, and they want to deploy the application, so they can just best choose their region, right? If the user audience, if the targeted audience is in India, they can choose the region as India and utilize this particular compute resource that they have and deploy their application, right? Likewise, if the user, if the target audience is in different regions, they can choose their respective regions and then deploy their application. They don't have to buy the servers in that particular region and then host them, maintain them, and do all the maintenance part there. No, that's not required, right? So that's what they do, right? And inside each and every region, they have something called as an availability zones. They have data centers being laid out. Okay, let's say in India, right? So they have different regions, I would say. Okay, India is a tropical name given, but in India you have Central India and South India as two regions that Microsoft Azure have chosen. You can just actually choose one of these and deploy your applications inside this particular regions, right? So inside each and every region, you have availability zones or a set of data centers being set up. Okay, so what is a data center? Data center is actually racks and servers put up together and maintained in a well-equipped manner, right? So Microsoft Azure has done all these things. Okay, so usually you will have 3 availability zone. Okay, AZ2, AZ1, AZ2, and AZ3. Maximum, minimum of 3 availability zone will be there in each and every region, and it can increase also based upon the Microsoft's expandability, right? So, and inside each and every availability zone there will be group of data centers. Okay, so I can say this is one availability zone, and this is one availability zone, and this is one unavailability zone, and you can have multiple data centers inside this particular availability zone in order to just group them together and then set up your high availability architecture. Perfectly fine, right? So that's great, right? Yeah, so that's how Azure has laid out their cloud services. Okay, now coming to the different kinds of cloud services that they offer. What are the different kinds of cloud services? Anyone who can list it up over the chat, as some of you are aware of Azure Cloud. What are the different kinds of services that Azure provides? Okay, storage S3, great. So they provide compute services, storage services, networking services, database services, and many more, right? So majorly classifying, these are the 4 that I would classify. Yes, all the answers that you're giving over the chat is also the right one. IoT, analytics, AI, ML, network security, storage, all these things, yes, they are part of this Azure Cloud Services. But we are going to discuss majorly on this 4 topics, right? Because these are the major ones or essential ones that any cloud engineer needs to know, right? So what is computing? What are these compute services? So compute services are compute services are nothing but these are the servers that you request that Azure is actually providing for you, right? So be it a virtual machine, be it a group of virtual machines, I would say, which is Azure VMSs, or be it a serverless application, serverless compute services, right? Be it anything, right? So this all comes under computing. Storage, as I said, okay, what are the storage services that we have? We have Azure Storage Account. Okay, then networking. What are the different networking services that we have? Database services that we have, right? So I can classify the Azure Cloud Services as these 4 stuffs, and in order to provide these 4 stuffs, right, Azure has classified into infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. These are the cloud deployment models, right? So what is infrastructure as a service, right? So if you are someone who is interested more onto administrator part, right, so you can actually go for infrastructure as a service, right? If you're someone who like to work with the black console screen, you can go with infrastructure as a service, right? It's for administrative purpose, admin purpose. Then we have platform as a service, right? Let's say you're a developer and you now want to work on Azure Cloud. Okay, you as a developer, your job role is to just develop the application. But now if you want to leverage Azure Cloud and if you want to deploy your own application and see if it's working fine or not, how you can do that? You cannot always rely on the admin to actually deploy your applications for you, because admins maintain the infrastructure, right? You cannot always ask them to deploy, but if you want to do it all by yourselves, you can just go with platform as a service. And Azure has a suite of services which will help you actually deploy your applications all by yourself. You don't have to wait for them, right? By this, I don't say that you should be knowing the console commands, you should be knowing how things work. No, all you have to know is just you need to write your code, your business logic, and its associated stuffs with it. That's it, your runtime, I would say, right? So only that is needed as a developer for you, and rest Azure is going to take it for you, right? Then we have software as a service, okay, where entire application is being developed and maintained by Microsoft, and you just have to create a user login and then start using the application. I can just show it to you over the browser. Something like this, yeah. You see this, okay? Whenever you set up an application, you have these different layers that you set up to deploy an application, okay? On site, if it is an on site, you will set up everything: networking, storage, servers, virtualization, OS, all these things you set up by yourself. But when you choose the different computing models that we have, IaaS, PaaS, and services, Microsoft is gonna help you with certain levels. If you go with infrastructure as a service, Microsoft is gonna set up the networking, storage, servers, virtualization part for you. You as an administrator can choose your operating system, can choose your sorry, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So if it is infrastructure as a service, see all these layers, the green part here is being taken care by the your Microsoft Azure team, and the orange part is something that you take care by yourself. You have leverage to do all modifications, all choices that you want to do in the orange part, the OS, middleware, runtime, data, and application. But when it comes to PaaS, see here, you as a developer, you don't have to actually know the technical part of how to work with black servers, right? I mean, the black screens and consoles and everything, right? You will just have your application and application related data, and all you have to do is just ask Azure to give you a platform to deploy your application. So Microsoft Azure says, okay, I'll try to give you that as well, and they're trying to set up all these things for you, and you just have to put your application and application data in it and deploy your application. That's it. Okay, then coming to SaaS. Okay, then coming to SaaS, just give me a moment. I think yeah. Then coming to SaaS, you see the entire manageability is on Azure side. You don't have any control over it, right? So you just create a login, maybe a username and password, and they just actually create it for you, and they give access based on your subscriptions. Then you access your application. Examples for SaaS would be Office 365, or the Salesforce application, and all these things, right? So today we are going to discuss majorly on platform as a service. Okay, we're going to see the services that are suitable for developers and how they can actually work on it. I hope it's clear. Any doubts or any queries? let's talk about a service called Azure App Services. Okay, so Azure App Services is actually a platform as a service. Okay, so this is actually a platform as a service where Azure is actually maintaining everything for you, and you just have to create one and then deploy applications on it, right? So Azure Web App provides a platform to build an application inside Azure without having to deploy and configure and maintain the things all by yourself, like how you do it with a VM. If you deploy an application inside a VM, then you have to configure each and everything, like installing the packages, installing the softwares, and setting up things, redirecting things, everything. You have to do it. But when it comes to platform as a service, or Azure App Services, Microsoft is gonna help you do it, right? Also in terms of availability. Okay, availability, right? Microsoft is gonna help you with this as well based on the availability options that you choose, right? Microsoft is gonna give you a high available platform as a service, for you to actually deploy an application. Let's see what actually we're gonna discuss here, right? So Azure App Service has these capabilities, right? So it has a built-in scale support. What do I mean by this, right? So what is built-in scale support? Okay, based upon the user requests coming in. Take an example of Flipkart, right? So recently we had the sale on Flipkarts, right? Not only Flipkart, all the shopping sites we had sale, right? So during these important days, or during these sales happening on e-commerce applications, right? You can expect lots of users coming in, hitting your sites, accessing your applications and things like that. Yes, in the backend, your Flipkart application is actually deployed onto a server. I'm not talking about the compute capacity of this particular server, but right now, you might have encountered the best suitable compute resource for your Flipkart application based upon its functionalities and so forth, and you would have configured it. But let's say on special days like these sales happening on, right? You can expect more number of users hitting your site. Okay, usually maybe let's say 10 users are hitting your site, and during special days, let's say 100 users are hitting the site. Then the server should be capable enough to handle those user requests and give a good user experience, right? So if 100 users are hitting the site, there are chances that the server capacity is being overloaded and the application might go down. We have faced this in our in our 10th standard results, right? So during the 10th standard, or during these government results coming up, right, the servers would be down most of the time. It's because all over the state you have the results being out, and so many users are hitting the site for the results, and that's actually burdening the server. That's why, right? So there should be a way for you to handle this kind of a situation, right? Your server should be handling the user request. So how you do it with the help of built-in scale support. You can automatically scale up or scale down the resources, the compute resources, based upon your user requirements. That is built-in scale support. And with Azure App Services, you can actually go and do a CI/CD. I know some of you I have worked with DevOps as well, so you might be knowing about what is continuous integration and continuous deployment. So Azure App Service can work with DevOps, GitHub, Bitbucket, FTP, local Git repositories, many other. And it also has a deployment slot capability for you to actually safely deploy newer versions of your application, right? So so there are different kinds of service plans available. Okay, so I'll show it to you in the demonstrations, okay, which are available. Okay, so shared, dedicated, isolated, and consumption models are there. Based upon their tire, you can just choose it and then deploy your app service. Basically, what is an app service is, okay, so you have a web app. Okay, web app is nothing but it's your application that you have deployed. So to deploy this application, you need to have a computing servers, right? So app service plan, ASP, is actually gonna have these backend compute resources laid up based upon the choices that you make, be it consumption, isolated, dedicated, or shared. Okay, based on these, any one of these that you have chosen, it's gonna set up a suite of service for you. Okay, and then have it there, inside an ASP, and you're going to deploy your application inside these servers. That's what an app service plan is. So any application, any web app needs an associated ASP with it for it to actually deploy its application. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's actually go and create app services and come back. Right, so I'm just gonna open my portal. So just give me a moment, I'll share my screen, portal screen. Cool. Okay, so for those who are not aware of what an Azure account is, right? So this is the URL that you have to go to, portal.azure.com. Okay, so portal.azure.com is a site where this is a site where you're gonna work with Microsoft Azure. Okay, so basically, if you're gonna work with Microsoft Azure, there are different ways to work with Microsoft Azure. The first and easiest way to work with Azure is via GUI. That is graphical user interface, right? So this is the graphical user interface version of Azure. Okay, the other thing that we have is CLI. Okay, so CLI is nothing but the command line interface where if you have any CMDs. Okay, so let me just if you have any command prompts like this, and if you want to type in certain commands and then interact with Microsoft Azure, you can install Azure CLI package here. Okay, and then you can log in with Azure account and then type in certain commands and interact with Azure, right? So this is another one. And the third one that we have is the Cloud Shell methodology, where it gives you two options. One is Bash, the other one is PowerShell. So both the things you can actually choose and use. Okay, based on that you can trigger out certain commands and interact with Azure Cloud. Perfectly fine. You see here, this is my Microsoft account. Okay, and in a Microsoft account you should always have a subscription associated with it. So you might wonder what a subscription is, right? So I said that Azure is gonna provide you certain set of services and you're gonna pay for it, right? So number of hours that you use, you're gonna pay for it. So how is actually Azure calculating that particular price for your services utilization? It's through Azure subscriptions. Okay, subscription is a billing entity in Azure. Okay, in my case I have one subscription which is in the active state, which I'm gonna use. If you want to add subscriptions, you can add it. Okay, so there are free trials. If you're a fresh person in Azure, Microsoft Azure, you can leverage the free trial Azure subscription. Otherwise you can go with pay as you go or Visual Studio Enterprise subscriptions based on however you want to use it, right? So that's not the topic of discussion now. So I just wanted to tell that you need to have an active subscription for you to create resources in Azure. Cool. So coming up onto the main part, that is Azure App Services. Okay, you see that if you wanna take up any of these Azure services, okay, if you want to create any of your Azure services, right, you can actually click on this three dots and then navigate here and go through this set of services that are there. Okay, if not, here's a search bar. You can just type in certain keywords and your services will pop up and you can utilize it, right? So in my case, I'm just gonna create one app services. Okay, I'm just clicking on app services, create web app. Okay, now you see that to set up a web app, you have different sections here for you to actually set up. Okay, so all the star or hashtag one is important for you to configure. So you can choose your subscription. You can choose a resource group. Okay, so basically resource group is nothing but resource group is a logical entity in your Microsoft Azure to group all your services that you create, okay, for maintainability. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a new resource group. I'm just gonna give a name to my web app. Okay, now you see this is a publish methodology. Now inside a web app, I need to go and deploy my application as a developer, right? Whether I have the application in the code base, right? The the backend code, or you have containerized the application and you have the application in a containerized manner, you can have it here. Or if you have any static web app that you want to deploy, you can just go with this. I'm just going with code, and I say which is the runtime stack, right? So what is my programming language, right? So be it any programming language, you see that Microsoft is actually providing you this. I'm gonna just choose .NET and choose your operating system. I just want all of you to observe the things that we are configuring. See, we are just telling Azure that these are the things that I want, and Azure is actually provisioning things for you, right? So you can choose the region as well. Okay, so I can choose Central India. And coming to the important aspect, that is the pricing plans. So you can just see here that automatically app service has been created, but not created, it's gonna get created with this particular name. Okay, or if you want to create a new app service plan, you can just choose it, not to worry. And here you're gonna choose the pricing plan. What is the compute power that you need for your application, right? So I can just go with standard S1 because this is a standard one. So in S1 you have 100 total ACUs, 1.75 GB of memory, and 1 vCPU available, right? Then coming to the database part, if you wanna set up any database, you can create it. If you wanna do or integrate it with any deployment patterns, you can just do it. See, you have an option to integrate with GitHub. Okay, GitHub Actions, right? Networking part. Okay, if you want to set up certain networking constraints, you can do it here. Then if you want to monitor your application, you can make use of application insights as a service and monitor it. Okay, I'm just gonna keep it yes, and let it get created. And I'm just gonna review and create. So in the review, you can just see the entire configurations that you have made, and Microsoft is giving you an estimated price for it, right? Are you able to see it? Estimated price. This is the estimated price for a month for this particular configuration that I have made, and I can just create. You see that it's not the actual price, but it's just an estimated price. It can vary, go up or down, so based upon the requirement or utilization. So I have triggered the web app creation deployment. So this might take some time, so let this be happening. Meanwhile, we'll just move on towards slides and then come back here. Right, so inside our web app, okay, so there will be certain settings that you can actually make, right? So be it in terms of publishing your code, be it securing your code, okay, be it securing your code and securing your credentials, right? Any tokens or any kind of a sensitive data that you want to pass, right? If you want to pass those kinds of application settings or sensitive kinds of data, you can just go for the configurations part here and choose your application settings and then add new application settings here. This is naturally going to reflect you in the actual application. In case if you want to do any general settings or default documents or path mappings or whatever it is, you can just do it. There are connection string also. Some cases you might need your web app to connect with other services and get some data from there, but you want to configure it in a secured manner, right, without passing any credentials or anything like that. So here you can just create the connection string plus connection string, and then you can just provide the connection string. Let's say for example you want to connect with Key Vault as a service. You can actually add a new connection to a Key Vault and then set it up. Okay, so this is that is a manual way of doing it, but if you want to do it in a bulk manner, you can just write it in a JSON format, upload it on the Microsoft Azure platform, and application settings will be adapted, right? So you see that I don't know if you have observed, when we created the web app, it showed us two options for OS, Linux and Windows. So yes, it supports Linux and Windows applications. And coming to the security part of this thing, yeah, here also we have some security options, right? Yes, so let's see if it got created. Yes, it got it. Super. So most of the topics I'm gonna just walk through here, okay, and see how things are happening. Now that my web app has been created, right? Okay, so I'll just click on browse. See, this is my default web app. Now this is an empty web app, I would say. Okay, it's an empty web app that I would say, right, where nothing is there, but this is a default page that Microsoft Azure has kept, okay, for understanding, right? And if we deploy our application later on, and if you want to check the same page, if you just refresh masterclass-web app .azurewebsites.net, you can actually view your entire applications coming up here. So that's one best thing. Then you have other options here to stop, restart your applications and all here. Coming back here, okay, I was talking about the configurations, right? So here you have the configurations. Yeah, so here you can add your application settings, general settings, default documents, error pages, whatever it could be, you can just add it. Okay, and this is your app service plan. Okay, so you can actually increase or decrease your compute resources. You can just define it here. Okay, now coming back here, you have other options here: application insights, identity, backup options, custom domains, right? So you have so many options here which you can actually use it and self improvise your application as a developer, right, and deploy your applications, right? We have this app service editor also. If you want to edit the code from the portal itself, you have this option where you can actually do it. Okay, it's gonna give you an editor, and you can do some slight modifications or anything that you want then and there itself, and then configure things. That's also possible. Any doubts, team? You can just raise it up now. This is loading. Okay, so that's the editor here. Okay, app service editor. So as a developer, you can just open these links, use these file explorer extensions and everything. You can also associate it with Git as well. Okay, and then you can just modify content here itself, right? So if you want to deploy your applications from here, right, so all you have to do is, right, so there are different ways to deploy actually, right? So you can do it via CI/CD, or you can do it different ways. There are certain commands also from CLI which you can actually do it. Okay, so there is a command like AZ web app. So
Excuse me, Saila.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the participants wants you to repeat the app creation part. So can you please go through that once?
Web app creation?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so Pramod have asked that, right? So let me just create the web app again. And here are certain configurations that you have to make, right? So you can just choose your subscriptions, your resource groups. So once your resource group has been created, you can choose the same resource group for any set of resources that you can actually create. Then you can provide your name. I will say test webinar, and the name also should be something that is unique, because it's gonna be a very unique name, right? So I would just say okay, it's there. So you have the publish mode, right? So here is where you have to rethink. Okay, so once if you are for sure confident that it's gonna be code, you can go with code. Otherwise, Docker container or static web app, you can just choose it based on your preferences, based on your requirement, and then set it up, right? So you need to choose all these things: OS, the regions, the ASP, that is your app service plan. So for this app service plan, this is the compute that I have chosen, but if you want to choose any other, you can choose it, but you're going to pay that much, if you're using it, if you have chosen it. Okay, coming to the database, I'm not going to do anything. Keep it as default. Deployment also, I'm just going to keep it default. Networking also default. Monitoring also default. And review and create. That's how you actually go create a web app. Once you create a web app, you get this particular web app page. Okay, and you can notice that the web app endpoint URL will be your web app name .azurewebsites.net. Okay, so that's important thing that you can actually do, right? Yeah, coming to the triggering part of web app, right? How you can go and deploy your application onto a web app, right? So there are different ways. Okay, you can do it from the portal, right? Or you can implement via CI/CD pipeline. So what you can do in CI/CD pipeline is that okay, so let's say you can write one continuous integration CI/CD workflow. Okay, be it a GitHub workflow or Azure DevOps pipeline, or anything it could be. You can just configure your steps and stages and everything, and inside this pipeline you're going to define a deploy stage, and you're going to define the connectivity methodologies for Azure portal, and you're going to choose the Azure web app that you have created in this particular Azure portal. And when you trigger this particular pipeline, the pipeline will actually go and deploy the application onto the particular web app that you have actually created, right? So all these learnings you will actually do it in the actual courses. This is just an introductory part, right? Or the other one is, via the CLI, Windows CLI, or whatever CLI it could be. Or you can just type certain commands, and the command would actually deploy the application onto the web app. That is also doable. On the next learning part, that is on Azure Functions. So what is actually Azure Functions, right? So Azure Functions also comes under the category of Platform as a Service, right? So, but why do we actually make use of Azure Functions? We spoke about the other Platform as a Service, that is Azure Web App, right? So in Azure Web App, we can just deploy our applications so that applications can scale up, scale down automatically, and they have easy deployment opportunities, right? Be it from CI/CD or whatever it is, right? We are able to achieve a deployment in Web App itself. But why do we need another service for deployment for our application to run? That is Azure Functions. Why do we actually need this? Right? So basically, right, take an example of small activities like image compressions or notifications, or certain automatic tasks that you want to do, right? So let's take an example of one scenario where you want to take up automatic, you have a database, okay, and you have a web application. Web application is constantly interacting with databases and doing the CRUD operations, right? And for you as an administrator, you need to actually take a backup of this particular database every day. Okay, so you know how to take the backup, and you want to automate this particular process. Okay, so manually taking backup is an option, but it's not the recommended option, because every day you have to sit and open this, open your laptop, get into the database server, and then take the backup, store it, version control it. All these will be your hectic job. If you automate this particular process, then it's well and good, right? So like every day you get an alarm. Every day, at whatever time you want to get up, okay, you get an alarm ringing, okay, and it wakes you up, right? So it does it automatically because you have configured it that way. Similarly, here you have these activity here where you want to take a backup of this particular database every day. Maybe let's say at 6 p.m. every day you want to take up this particular backup. So what would be your automated way? Would you write an application? First approach would be, you can write an application and you can write the logic inside it, and then so that it will take the backup. Okay, and imagine that you're going with this particular option, okay, creating the application and then deploying this particular application onto the server, right? Like how we did with the VM or web app, right? So like that, you just do it, and things are working fine, very well and good. But just think it, with the utilization point of view, right? So every day at 6 p.m. only this particular application is getting triggered and it's running. Let's say it takes 5 minutes to actually take the backup. So 6 to 6:05 only, then it's actually running this particular application, and for this you have hosted the application onto a server all the time, and the application is there 24/7, right? Don't you think it is not effective? This approach is not good, because the activity, the logic is been executed only for 5 minutes. For that, your entire application has been deployed onto onto a server, and with no one being utilizing your application, it's up and running. It's consuming your compute resource, it's consuming your storage resource, it's consuming your time, maintenance, and many more. So just imagine these kinds of incidents or these kinds of activities, right? You don't have to spend time writing and deploying the application, the business logic, small business logic into an application and then deploying it. Instead, you can look for Azure Functions for it. Azure Functions is a serverless service. What do I mean by serverless service? It is just a piece of code. Okay, it is just a piece of code which gets triggered whenever someone triggers it, which will run whenever someone triggers it. A trigger could be anything. Okay, it could be a manual trigger. Okay, it could be a manual trigger, or it could be an automated trigger, right? Anything it could be. So this particular code will run only when it is getting triggered, or it could be scheduled trigger as well, right? So this code will run whenever a trigger has been scheduled, and it will only run for the number of minutes or number of time, okay, the time to which the code completes, okay, the activity completes, and then it will stop. That's why I call it as a serverless service, right? All you have to do is just choose your preferred language, write your business logic, set up your trigger, and that's it. Some other examples or some other scenarios for Azure Functions, I would say, is image compression. Okay, so let's take an example that you have a website. Okay, and users are uploading images onto the website, and the website actually stores those images into a storage account. Storage account is a storage service in Azure. Okay, they store the images into the storage account, the raw images onto the storage account. Now you as an administrator, you have to compress this particular image, maintain this particular images. So what you do, you can write one Azure function here which will actually pick up this particular image here, compress it, and then store it inside another storage account. This is one utilization. The other thing is, or whenever there's an upload operation onto a storage account, if you want any one of you to get notified, okay, Azure Functions can do it. Right? So simple tasks like this, there are many utilization tasks like this that you can actually do it, right? Which you can actually make use of Azure Functions to do it. Other examples I would say which you can use for Azure Functions is, let's say inside your Azure portal, right? You have different users, right? In your company, if you're just using your Azure account, you might have all the employees might have access to the Azure portal, and they extensively work on the particular Azure portal. Maybe for development purpose, they create certain services, and they release certain services. Creation, deletion, everything is part of development tasks, right? So let's say every day you need you as an Azure account administrator needs to make sure that no resources in your development account needs to be running, okay, after 6 p.m. Okay, after 6 p.m. if you don't want any resources to be running in your development account, you can write one Azure function, and you can write the logic in such a way that it will scan through all the regions, all the compute resources, networking, storage resources, and make sure that no instances are running. And if the instances are running, it should actually give one notification for you. That is the use case. Okay, so because if you keep the instances running, you are liable to pay for it. Okay, so I said about the pay-as-you-go model, right? So users have to pay for the number of hours that they're using. So to reduce the cost, you can actually enforce this particular methodology, where write one Azure function which will scan through your resources in your Azure account and list the resources that are running. Okay, and then if it is in the running state, you should inquire, you as an administrator should inquire that particular person who have created this particular resource, and then make sure that it is getting deleted. So you need to avoid unwanted charges. So that's another use case. So these are the small use cases that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's go and create one of the Azure function, and let's see how it's working. So I'm just clicking on Microsoft Azure, and there is one service called function app. You can just click on that, create. Okay, and here you see you can set up a subscription, you can set up a resource group. I'm choosing already existing resource group here. Then function app, I'm just saying okay. Now here also you can just determine whether you have the code deployed into a you have the code in terms of the repository, or in terms of a container image. You can go with the code. Then if you go with the container image, then you have different options underneath, so you can just choose your language, whichever language it could be it your Java, Python, .NET, whatever it could be, you can just choose it. Okay, then operating system, whichever you want to. Okay, and here's the hosting methodologies, right? So very important here, right? So this plan, you have to be very careful if you're when using your Azure functions. There are different hosting methodologies. One is the consumption methodology, consumption option. The other is the functions premium. The other is the app service plan. Remember app service plan that we discussed previously? The same app service plan that you created for web app could be used for function app as well, because they are serving as the compute resource only, right? So you can use the same app service plan. Consumption meaning how much ever you use, that much only you pay, right? So that is consumption. If it is functions premium, you are actually isolating, or you are allocating certain set of resources for you so that your function will use it. Okay, so that's something that you can choose. If you want to integrate a storage account, yes, by default you should have a storage account associated with the function app, so you can just create one or associate an already existing one, right? Then networking, I'm keeping the networking as default, monitoring also as default. Coming to the deployment part, if you want to do a deployment via GitHub Actions, you can do it. You can write GitHub workflows and then deploy it here. That is also doable, right? And then review and create. So now, as this is getting created, let me explain one more thing. I said that every function needs to have a piece of code, right? You're gonna have a function app, and inside that you're gonna have writing the piece of code. Now to run this particular function, or to run this particular code, right, there are two things. One is the trigger, the other one is the bindings, right? So what is a trigger? I spoke about it already. These are the mechanisms to make this particular code run. And when it comes to bindings, okay, so you can bind certain things to this particular code. Maybe if you want to install certain things to make this code run, you can associate that using the bindings. Okay, so there are two kinds of bindings. One is the input binding, the other is the output binding. Input binding is kind of input to this particular code. Output binding is what you want to get out of this particular code. Okay, so that's output binding. Okay, so I think the function app would have been created. Let's just refresh our screen. Okay, great. So this is a function app. If you just browse it, you'll have the default function app page running in, which denotes that function app is successfully running. And to work with function app also, there are different ways. Okay, so you can work with it in the portal, or if you are a developer and you are going to work with your Visual Studio, yes, you can clone it with your Visual Studio and write your logic there. Or if you have any CLI, you can just work with any CLI methodologies as well. Let me just create a function quickly and show you how things are. I'm going with the first option. You can choose the templates because Azure has these many templates available with it. Okay, so you can choose the template. I'm choosing HTTP trigger and creating a function inside my function app. You see, here you have the options. Okay, so if you want to write a code, HTTP trigger code. Okay. See, you have these many files, function.json, run.csx, all these things. You just have to look into this. This is a HTTP trigger, right? And these are the bindings. Function.json sets you the bindings, and by default it's having some set of code already available. So you can utilize this code or write your own logics here, and then you can run it. So I'll just click on test and run, and I'll just say run. You see, hello Azure, this is HTTP triggered function executed successfully. So it's kind of, you can test it here itself, you can run it here itself and make sure that your function is actually running. Okay, so that's about Azure Functions team. Okay, so detailed explanation would be given in the actual course, but I just wanted to give you an overview here. The next topic for discussion is Cosmos DB.
Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.